from your losses or mistakes. I learned a hard lesson coming out, attempted to negotiate buying the condo that the practice was in addition to the practice from a retiring doc.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. Hey, welcome to the show. Well, I'm excited, as always, for these conversations. But today we get to speak with a clinical dentist who has journeyed from W-2 to private practice. And the exciting part is the real estate journey along the way, acquiring practices with the real estate, acquiring practices where he thought the real estate was combined in it with an option to buy, and then just general real estate investing now, as his approach is being present in the area, being present in the market, knowing the pieces. I'm excited to get into this conversation. Now, along with being a clinical dentist, he's an entrepreneur, an investor, a mentor, and a family man. He invests in people, property, and himself. Very important. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Casey Granger. All right. Welcome to the show, Casey. How's it going today, man?
Hey, it's going well. It's going well. How about yourself?
Man, never been better. It's a little chilly here. We got a little cold front sweeping through the states. We're recording here in the beginning of November. So I'm all right. I moved to the south to get away from the cold. So it's cold. Where are you at, Casey?
We're in Maryland, and it's pretty cold here. Can't run from it.
Yeah. Yeah. So great. So just so the listeners know, Casey, you are a practicing dentist, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I practice or have been practicing for about 20 years and located in Maryland for the past maybe 7 years or so.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your journey through med school and kind of where you've landed at now. When I started out, my intention was to obviously get a dental degree and practice dentistry. But in the private practice setting, where I can explore my entrepreneurial spirit, and I started out working for other people, and including public health and also private practice as as an employee. But got into my own practice back in 2008 after. Again, years of working for other folks and a lot of training and residencies and all that. And ever since, I've been sort of doing my own thing by myself as well as with colleagues. Very, very interesting. And that journey is a whole conversation in itself. But I did hear you say entrepreneurial spirit. I think a lot of us have that itch, but not all of us take effect or implement, that. What was the biggest push? Because it sounds like to me you're a private practice and you own your own business. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. I think the difference, or you say people don't maybe take advantage of that if they do have that urge.
Yes, so they have the urge, but don't take action.
Yeah, it's a leap of faith.
Yeah.
You have to, trust in you and your ability and believe that your efforts will pay off and, bet on you, put your money on yourself,
That happened in 2008, right? Now that you've got your own practice. And when that started, Casey, did you buy real estate? Do you own the office that you're in? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, initially I intended to, and you hopefully learn lessons from your losses or mistakes. And I learned a hard lesson coming out. I attempted to negotiate buying the condo that the practice was in addition to the practice from a retiring doc. And my understanding of everything we negotiated was that, within a few years, I would have the option to buy. I had the first right of refusal in a situation where, everything was reviewed, by lawyers on both ends, and, professional leases, nothing was left to just, the doctors doing it there. We got the suits involved. But what I didn't understand that, he had to actually offer it. My understanding was by the end of the first lease, I could buy. So that wasn't the case. He held off as long as he could, and attempted to renew, the leases and that type of thing. And what ended up happening is I got out. My intention was to purchase the property in addition to the practice, and I was very clear about my intentions. But yeah, that little loophole there made me have to take a different route. So that was the first one.
And Casey, where did that? I mean, that's a whole challenge, stressful challenge in itself. Where did that push you? Where did you end up after that?
Well, I ended up. That's how I ended up in Maryland. So that was in Virginia, and that practice, it was nice, clinically and doing dentistry, it's fairly routine, right? But these side ventures or adjunct ventures, like attempting to buy the property as an investment in hard assets and things like that, I had to take a detour, so ended up within another lease, because I wasn't in a situation to buy at that point, because I was all in on that practice. So I opened another practice, a second. I kept the one in Virginia, as my base, and opened another practice. And from that point, when that lease started to come to an end, a gentleman I worked with and I had, similar ideas as to what we wanted. So he and I invested in property together, and opened a third practice. And so we now own that property, and as well as practice out of it. And a few years later, we did it again. And at some point during that time, I was able to essentially have someone come in and buy out the practice and take over that practice in Virginia. But the other two practices are still functioning, and we still have, ownership of the premises.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. And then when you sold that one in Virginia, obviously there was no real estate attached to it. So is there anything in selling that stands out to you? Did you learn anything that you'd like to share about selling that practice there?
Well, I'm sure there's a slew of lessons, but I think one of the main things is with clinical dentistry, I think logistics are a big factor. Commuting and doing a lot of long distance moving around, it can put a lot of wear and tear on you, physically, emotionally, all that. So if you do have a home base, meaning a place where you're going to practice, it's probably a good idea to base your life around that, meaning, home. If you have a family and kids, you want those things sort of together, make it a community type of situation, where you're a part of that community and you're serving that community. And that's if you're again taking the approach of having a primary practice where you are most of the time.
Interesting. Into this real estate investing world, then have you ventured outside of those facilities that you practice in? Tell us a little bit about maybe some of your other ventures in real estate.
Well, they've been fairly straightforward. Mostly anytime I've moved in the last 25 years, and I've lived in 5 different states in the last couple of decades. So anytime we move to a new state, I will invest in the properties that we live in instead of renting. And obviously there's lessons with that as well, but the idea is to, accumulate an asset versus just paying rent. There are those were definitely uh, good experiences in the sense that, I learned what it took to acquire property, what it takes to maintain property,
Mm.
what it takes to, sell the property, what it takes to manage it, what it takes to, have tenants, the differences between a homestead and a purely investment property. So, I have not yet ventured into investment property that I do not have some sort of, tangible, or my feet aren't actually in.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is the next step.
Yeah.
But as far as what we've done so far, we've again used our residences as investments, and also our practices, the places where I know I'm going to be, and I know I have to pay for it anyway, so it might as well be mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just the places where you're present. That's where the investments lie. And those, it sounds like when you moved, you maintained the houses and then you rented them out. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was able to essentially get some equity in the properties, as well as some passive income. And, and then when it was time, when the market was right, was able to, liquidate and use that to, obviously, invest in something else.
Interesting. And did you ever do any 1031 exchanges when you did that? Probably not, because you weren't going into a like kind investment then.
No, I didn't. I did not. I did not.
Interesting. The units that you're holding, KC, that you practice out of, are they all single units, or do you have other tenants connected to them?
So they are mixed use.
Mm-hmm.
So you can operate a business as well as it can be used as a residence as well. So both of them are set up like duplexes, essentially.
Interesting. Those are cool. And then I guess the next path, thinking about that passive investment piece, what are some thoughts that are going through your mind with next steps? Like what's next for KC in real estate investing?
Well, ideally, commercial, multi-unit properties, where we can bring in other businesses that hopefully either want something long term, and again, we hold the property, or if it is, medical related, we can have sort of a referral unit internally. So that way we're both dealing with, again, the property as an asset and an investment, as well as potentially the professional relationships physically being there. So, those are the things we're looking into now.
And that, again, sounds like a piece where you would be present in it. So that narrows down the market, narrows down the search. What does the direction go for you in building that team to make something like that happen? What are the first steps that you think of?
Location.
Yeah.
Location's the first thing. A lot of market research, where what's being developed and where, and either community plans or county plans. You look at that, look at 10-year plans, things like that, and see what's being developed, and in 10 years, what is, this new area or whatever area you're looking at, what is it going to look like? And, usually if you're going to, plant your feet, and that's whether I do that or not. But if you're going to, look for something again on the medical side, dental, medical, what have you, healthcare, those places are going to be where the people are, where the communities are, where the houses are being developed, where the, new neighborhoods are being built. So that's where we start.
And then what's your first reach out to add to the team? Do you currently work with a broker, or how do you, are you ground up development? Are you existing redevelopment? What's that look like for you?
Well, ground up is a much bigger upfront investment and a lot, riskier. You have to put more into it. Redeveloping is a bit, there's less you have to put in initially with the investment. All of it's a risk, but generally, yeah, we deal with brokers, depending on the community. So we have relationships with brokers in Maryland, DC, the surrounding area. This area is sort of it's like a tri-state type of thing. They call it the DMV. So DC, Maryland, Virginia, even as far as Pennsylvania and West Virginia, are all considered somewhat local. Everything's within a 2-hour radius. So, just speaking to people in those jurisdictions and finding out what's available and what meets our needs. The development in DC that we invested in, we were able to get in at a time where there was a lot of changes going on in the community. They built a trolley station and a trolley line on the road. Again, this is after, so we knew this was coming. Mm-hmm. But when we invested in the property and established the practice, again, we knew all these things were coming. There's a new sort of pedestrian friendly, restaurant type area that, a lot of cities are getting now, as people are coming out from the suburbs and back into the urban environment. And we were able to time that really well. So far it's paid off.
From the commercial approach, or from the commercial perspective, I guess a little different. My lane is residential, and there are certain laws and regulations that whether it's landlord friendly or tenant friendly. Do you have any of the same feeling in your experience in the commercial aspect? Is there any, because in residential, we've got to evict somebody more often than commercial. But I mean, do you have any of those concerns, especially in that area that you're in?
I'd say a short answer is no. It's not. It's definitely not the same. On the residential side, that headache that you are speaking of, I've heard many times from friends and associates who dabble in that or do that for a living, either or. I've heard of it being so bad that, one guy, he just sold it. He just sold his 4-unit building. Mm-hmm. He got it for a great price. He made a profit. He just didn't want to have to deal with that anymore. And certain laws in certain areas are a lot more stringent than others. So it depends on where you are too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. That's interesting, I guess, perspective looking at commercial in these states that are not necessarily landlord friendly. Kind of a different twist there. I have some family members who own multis in DC area, and I got to tour their properties, and it's interesting. I'm learning things like rent control and all of this kind of stuff. And in my little world, it's crazy. And there were some things with veterans, controlling rents for veterans and stuff like that. So very interesting. Well, that's really cool stuff, and kind of like anchored in on this, presence is necessary, knowing your market. I mean, there's so many pieces that I'm hearing you say when it comes down to being a successful real estate investor, that you're in it, man, you're on it. Knowing the market, staying ahead of, knowing what's happening in development, sticking in areas where you know what's going on, and if it's in healthcare, in dentistry, I mean, you know what's happening, you know what's going on, and I think that's awesome. What would be a crazy idea for you, a crazy investment for you that you would consider that wouldn't align with any one of those things we just talked about?
You said crazy investment. You mean
Mhm.
just outside of my lane, but sounds
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Um, uh, a an apartment complex.
Mm.
Yeah, I'd find that interesting. Actually, for a short period of time, some friends and I looked into investing in an apartment complex in New Orleans, and
Mm.
this after one of the hurricanes. The owners just wanted to get out of it because obviously all the hurricane damage and everything they would have to do. So we were going to be able to get into it for a really good price, but we couldn't find the contractors. I think, which is the same reason that the owners wanted to sell.
Yeah,
Couldn't find contractors to do
yeah.
the work, so that didn't come through for it. But that I was excited about that, and if it comes up again or if I find something like that again, I will jump on it.
Yeah. Mine is a hotel. I think mine's a hotel.
Ah,
Mine's outside of my lane, but it's got to be special, Casey. It's got to be maybe somewhere in the Caribbean where I could do
ah,
like a nice little bar restaurant attached with, with the rooms as well too. I mean, that's a whole different world. It's like so many um real estate investors venture into this world of restaurateur, hotelier, and it's completely different. That's not in your lane, man. If you invest in real estate, it doesn't mean you can cook dinner on Friday nights, right? It doesn't mean that you can have that hospitality piece, but that's always something that's in the back of my mind. It's one of those big goals, I've got some colleagues that have ventured down that path and have acquired, destination type properties, but it sounds
that's
like
a
fun.
great idea. I like that one. I may
Yeah.
have to borrow that one.
Come on, man. We'll get next to each other. We'll be next door neighbors, man.
Yeah.
Something puts a smile on my face. That's for sure. So many pieces along the way of this stack of experiences that we put together, and just maybe there's love for food, hospitality, and being in a place that's awesome. Obviously, in that path, Casey, there's going to be headaches, there's going to be nightmares, but it can't keep you. Just keep driving, keep driving. But hey, man, if you could look back, say 10 or 15 years ago, Casey, and you were sat beside someone who was on a similar path as you, where you were sitting 10 or 15 years ago, what would you tell that person that could help them at that moment in their life?
Well, if somebody was interested in doing what I do, let's just say as a young dentist, um, you know, I would actually say don't let the naysayers talk you out of it. Uh, I found what I found is people will talk you out of great ideas just because either it's unfamiliar to them, um, or maybe in a maybe they just have ill will towards you. Who knows? Whatever the case, it's common to find people um, that will try to have you do things their way versus your own. Do it your way, and you may stumble and fall, but you have to be willing to take that risk. You have to be willing to accept what happens. Um, and you're probably not reinventing the wheel. You maybe are just talking to the wrong folks. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, don't let people talk you out of your ideas.
That's awesome advice. And, I hear that a lot, especially I'm an outsider. I'm not a physician. I come from the construction world. I come from architecture and real estate. And now being inside of the wall with physicians and dentists, and it's just amazing to me, because for me, I have a conglomerate around me, right? But in medicine, you tend to have medicine around you, doctors marry doctors, because you spend your life with these people. But that presents a challenge when it comes to situations like this, Casey, and it makes great advice, because just because they may know a lot in medicine doesn't mean they know anything about real estate or about business. So expanding your associations, getting outside of your circles, and that'll help in that way, because what I say every single time is, when those naysayers are around, they're going to be right every single time until they're not, right? Mm-hmm. And they're going to keep trying to condition you, because that's the norm that they're accustomed to, and you said it perfect, whether it's ill will towards you or they just don't know. A lot of people are going to give you their advice, whether you want it or not, right?
Right.
Yeah. What's that worth? For sure.
Yeah. You take bits and pieces, sometimes, especially if they do have your best interest in mind, they may give you a pearl, mm-hmm. But if someone doesn't, I don't know, it's like credibility, right? If you were to tell me something about, buying a property or flipping a property or what have you, I'm going to listen. You were going to tell me about, doing anesthesia. Yeah. Why would I listen to you?
Right. Yeah.
But again, that's the converse of it, right? So why would I take real estate advice from somebody in healthcare who doesn't know anything about it?
Right. Yeah. It reminds me of a book, and I mentioned this book a lot, The Richest Man in Babylon. That story in there about, and he gave his son a sum of money, and basically then gave him a time period of, okay, show me what you can do with this money before you would inherit the wealth of the family. And the first thing he did is he went out and lost the money. He gave it to some bricklayer that says, yeah, invest in this, something about chariots or something, and it's like, you can't follow people that don't, stay in your lane is a good thing for most of the time. But hey, Casey, it's been a wonderful conversation with you, man. And I just want to echo it again. I'm grateful for you spending your time with us, sharing your experience. I know there's a lot of listeners out there in similar scenarios, growing their own business, the private practice, how that relates with real estate. And I really love your approach of staying in your lane and having these places where your feet are in the buildings, the markets because your feet are on the streets, kind of deal. So congratulations on your journey, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. To the listeners, again, as always, thank you for your time and your attention today. If you have any questions for us, maybe delve deeper into the real estate and how that relates to our private practice scenario. What's the relationship? Who should you talk to? I had actually a colleague of mine is a dentist who is selling his practice, perfect scenario. And as soon as he mentioned that to me, I wanted to make sure that I reach out to everybody I know that's been through that process before, just like KC's experience on what to do and what not to do. So if you know of anybody or you have an idea for the show, just send us an email, info@physicianwellsystems.com. And we appreciate your time and your attention today. Thank you.